What's up? What's up? It's Raphael, NBA Draft Junkies. Back again. I got another guest for today, Chase Thomas. I've been speaking with him through email, and he sent me his big board. His a little bit different than others because he made player comparisons, and I like the player comparisons, but I'm also kind of scared of them because if you're wrong, people will they'll be in your neck. And the most famous one I can think of is remember on NBA Draft.net they compared Deshaun Stevenson to Michael Jordan, and so that was a crazy comparison. And I see that he's a Charlotte fan. So I'll go ahead and answer this question. I've had a lot of people ask me this question about these shoes in the background. So I'm a big Jordan 1 fan. Like the black toe Jordan 1s are my favorite Jordans, right? And so I want to say it was maybe 2014, I want to say. All-Star Weekend was in New Orleans. And I had went to All-Star Weekend. And so I had a friend of mine that played in the NBA, and then his stylist, she helped find all his shoes and his sneakers. So I called her. She's like, "You in New Orleans?" And I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Hey, come to this Jordan brand party with me." And so she's like, "I got a +1." So I went with her, and then they had this this competition in a sense to where if you can design your own Jordan 1, and if you win, they will you can possibly have your own shoe made, and it may go into production or whatever. So that was when they were the Charlotte Bobcats at the time, but they were transitioning to the Hornets maybe the next year or the year after. So all I did was I said, well, you know what? I'm going to create a black toe Jordan 1, and I'm going to flip the colors into Charlotte Hornets colors. And, didn't think anything of it. And then I ended up doing like some influencer work for Jordan Brand to where like whenever like some CP3s or Blakes came out, they would ask me to go to like New York and play in them, just mostly the performance shoes. And then they would give me a bunch of Jordan gear. So it was cool. I would play basketball with like different shoe editor or bloggers. I can't think of the guy's name. What's the guy's name that used to be on ESPN? He's on Fox now. He's always talking about his sources. Oh, Chris Broussard.
Yeah.
He was on my team one game, and he can hoop. Chris Broussard
really?
in the game. Yes. Yes, he can hoop. It was him. I mean, but, a lot of guys that, if you're in the sneaker culture that are pretty famous, they would go to these different events in New York. I actually went to one in LA. So long story short, to my surprise one day, I was actually living in Los Angeles that next year. And I came home for All-Star break. I live in Dallas. I came home from Dallas on All-Star break, and I had like all these shoe boxes piled up at my door. Thankfully, I live in a safe apartment. Nobody stole them. And so when I opened the box, bang, it was these shoes. And they sent me a letter. You probably can't read it. But yeah, the Jordan brand liked my shoe, and they specifically made it for me in my
That's
size.
Good.
It's a 1 of 1. Nobody has the shoe. And I keep getting DMs saying, "Hey, I've been looking for that shoe. What's the name of it?" But yeah, so that's it. So I said I have to say this. It's a Charlotte Hornets colorway Jordan 1. I guess the colors aren't exactly accurate in a sense. I guess they were more so the colors of the Hornet, the first time they wore those colors. I think they've changed it up a little bit since then. But yeah, so when I saw you with the Charlotte Jordan shirt, I thought, okay, maybe I'll finally go ahead and explain to them like this shoe. No, it's not a fake shoe that I bought from a bootlegger that I'm posting it up. But yeah, it's my own personal shoe, and I'll never wear it. So, but yeah, that's the story. So anyway, the real reason why we're here is to discuss your big board, but I like the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, you have player comparisons on your big board. So who is the number 1 player on your big board?
So number 1, I have LaMelo. My comparison for him was I don't think it's a great comp, but it's Penny Hardaway and like a 6'8" Trae Young. And the only reason why I say that is because I buy his jumper a little bit. I think even though he didn't shoot, he shot, I think, 25% from three this year. I think he can, if he gets a better base on his jump shot, gets better footwork, I think he can be a little bit more consistent, get up there into like the 35% range maybe, and on a high volume, like around 8 attempts per game, something like that. And I mean, he has the ability to knock down deep threes like Trae does, in my opinion. It's just I think the shot selection isn't there yet, and yeah, I think it's mostly just a shot selection thing for him, like Trae was at Oklahoma.
Well, I feel like all right, I can deal with somewhat bad shot selection if you're a sniper.
Yeah, that's true.
So with Trae, even though his shot selection at Oklahoma, I mean, it was questionable, but you knew that he was capable of running off 5-6 in a row.
Yeah.
And even now in the NBA, my question for him coming in was, is there an NBA team that's going to allow him to have that same type of freedom to do what he wants and to not necessarily defend, but, you know, just play with so much freedom? And I was wrong. I didn't think a team would. But the Hawks have allowed him to do what he does best, you know, live with his shot selection, which, I mean, I think that you have to. I don't know if you can really, like, put him in the box or kind of give him too much structure, because he's at his best. He's most dangerous when he's freestyling. So I think LaMelo is very similar to that.
Yeah.
I am curious to see if there is a team that's going to give him the same amount of freedom. But the difference to me is that I feel like, you know, Trae Young is a much better shooter.
Yeah.
So my question is, are you going to give him that type of freedom with shot selection to pull up jumpers early in the shot clock if he's not efficient? But if he is efficient, then he is a bigger Trae Young. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's ever going to get to that level, which is why I'm kind of skeptical on it. I couldn't really find a great one for him. I think another one could be like maybe SGA a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean more towards upside of the Penny Trae best case scenarios. I think Gilgeous-Alexander's, I think he's more of a two, a combo, than actually one. But then again, I mean, we've always seen him, you know, like when he was with the Clippers. I guess he played some point there, but in Oklahoma City, they had like a 3-point guard lineup. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2. Who's your number 2 player and your comparison?
So I have Anthony Edwards too, and I think my comparison for him, like his ultimate ceiling, I think is like Donovan Mitchell. I think his like realistic comparison is probably Zach LaVine, just because I think he lacks like that feel that Zach LaVine does on defense. I think Edwards is a good on-ball defender. I think his problem's mostly off-ball and just mostly a feel thing, much like his offensive game. He's not really a great playmaker, doesn't really get other guys involved, just looks for his own shot mostly. So I think he's kind of similar to Zach LaVine in that aspect.
So you're saying like your best case scenario is Donovan Mitchell, but Zach LaVine would probably be your, you know, you think the more realistic comparison?
Yeah.
What is your floor? Like, what is your basement for him?
Ooh, that's a good question, because I know you mentioned like Dion Waiters before. I don't know if it's that low. Maybe like JR. But even then, him in Denver he was so good in Denver. I don't know if.
Yeah, people forget that JR in Denver was, and I've mentioned it probably before. I had a chance once to watch J.R. Smith play pickup, and it was NBA All-Stars there. Kevin Durant was there. Carmelo, obviously. This was like 2014. Kemba Walker. And J.R. Smith in pickup is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, I can believe it. Yeah.
There's so much stuff that, you know, he was athletic. One of the things that I noticed that he could do that I've only seen maybe one or two other people do is that he could pivot both ways. Like, he had a left pivot game. He had a right pivot game. But one of the things about JR is he settled into a role as more so just a shooter and a floor spacer. I mean, that's what he's pretty much known for. But I think that he really could have, if you ever like played for a bad team, he could have been a guy that they ran the offense through, pick and rolls. I mean, there's a lot he can do, but he just kind of accepted a role as a shooter, and I mean, maybe it's helped his career. I mean, maybe he would have been a guy that averaged 25 points a game on a really bad team, and he would have got a reputation as a loser in a sense. But I can somewhat see the J.R. Smith comparisons.
I was gonna say if Edwards goes to Minnesota, if he could potentially be like JR in a way that they already have Russell and Cat, and maybe he's just like more of an off-ball guy, more so than on the ball and running the offense through him.
And see, I don't know if that's best fitted a good role for him because he needs the ball in his hands. I mean, I think that's when he's most effective. I think the transition for JR was a little easier because he could shoot. He was a really good catch and shoot off the ball scorer. I think Edwards really struggled. I can't remember off the top of my head the numbers, but they weren't really good as far as him shooting off the catch.
Yeah.
All right, let's go down to number 3. You have Killian Hayes. And who is your player comp for Killian Hayes?
So this isn't a great – I don't feel great about this one either, but it's pretty basic D'Angelo Russell. I think he's a little bit more explosive, and I think he's a lot better defender than Russell is. But their offensive games are pretty similar. They can both – I mean, Russell's a little bit better three-point shooter, but I think in a couple of years he'll be about the same offensive player that Russell will be if he hits the ceiling.
Yeah, I like the comparison. They're both left-handed. I thought D'Angelo Russell was going to be an incredible passer coming out of Ohio State as far as his vision. Not saying that he's not. It seems like he's more so of a scorer now than like playmaker for others. But yeah, I mean, to me, that's my best comparison. They're both left-handed. They're both not necessarily going to blow by you off the dribble. I think D'Angelo Russell's always going to need a screen. He's not going to really just get to the rack one-on-one. I think Killian is probably better at getting to the basket at this stage. Russell was definitely a better shooter at the same stage.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, I like that comparison. I think it's as close as you can come. My brother, shout out to James, he thinks that Killian could be like Goran Dragic in a sense. He sees some comparisons. I don't see the first step. You know, Dragic he's such an aggressive attacker.
Yeah.
And his first step is, it's underrated, but he gets there. He's so physical. I don't know if Killian is there yet, but maybe he could develop into that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good comparison. I agree with it 100%. All right, now with number 4, here's another comparison I agree with as far as like a ceiling. And it is Devin Vasel. And who is your comparison for Vasel? Best case scenario.
So before I came on, I was thinking about moving Vasell down a little bit because I saw that workout video yesterday, and I'm just oh man, that looks rough. But
I hope I saw somewhere that said that they were just playing around at the end of a workout. I hope that's the case. But if he changed his form on his jump shot to look like that, he's definitely I don't know. That would be almost as strange as Markelle Fultz.
Yeah, didn't Michael Bridges do that too after like a couple years in Phoenix? Didn't he change his jumper?
I want to say it sounds familiar, but I mean, definitely it wasn't like that though.
Yeah, I don't know why people with good jumpers in college are changing it. If he did change it, which we'll see. But I gave him a ceiling comp of Paul George, which is obviously high, especially if his jumper's like that. But I think if his handle improves, if he becomes more of a lead ball handler, puts a little bit more weight on, like 10 to 15 more pounds, I think he can get there eventually. But I think a more realistic one's probably like Chris Middleton, something like that. Even then, that's a really good player. That's an all-star caliber player. So I'm pretty high on him. I just don't know if his ball handling doesn't get there, I think he's just more of like a catch and shoot guy,
Yeah.
just like a complimentary role player, pretty much.
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty high on him, and I'm high on his upside. I've been on record of saying his best case scenario is like a Paul George. He has a ways to go as far as like the ball handling and the creativity as far as like getting to the basket. But I also wonder is the reason why he doesn't attack the paint is because he's so skinny.
Yeah,
he's not ready for that type of contact. I wonder if he'll be a better slasher with added weight and then NBA floor spacing. So yeah, I'm high, and this is pre behind the head Tory Lanez jump shot looking video. So yeah, I mean that would be my comparison. I think the Middleton one is pretty good. To me, like his baseline or I think like his floor would be like but Trevor Ariza type.
Yeah,
where
that's a good
if he's just a defender, catch and shoot guy, athletic guy on the open floor. So yeah, I mean I think well, you know what? Before that video, he was my safest pick. But now after seeing that video, I got to think twice about that. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I looked at that and I was just like, wow, I don't know. Ugh. And maybe it's because he was shooting like a pretty deep three, and I saw another comment that was like he's shooting a deep three, like, but I don't know. Even then, I don't know. It still kind of worries me a little bit, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like he was launching a medicine ball from behind his head.
Yeah, it did. I saw Kevin Conner like said that on Twitter.
Yeah, it was, man, that was ugly. Did you ever see that video where Tory Lanez was playing basketball with some friends? Same exact jump shot. Same exact jump shot. All right, number 5, and this is unique. I never thought about this, but it makes somewhat sense to me. Who was your first of all? You got Onyeka Okongwu as number 5 on your big board, and who was your player comparison for Okongwu?
I'm a younger guy, but it's Antonio McDyess. Like I think he was on like the Pistons in his prime mostly, but I think they're very similar players. I don't think I see the Bam comparison with Okongwu a lot. I just don't know if he's ever going to get to that level of passing. I mean, Bam's like the second or third best passing big in the league. I don't know if he ever gets there. I think he can be a good passer, but I don't know if he's ever going to, you're ever going to run the offense through him like you do with Bam.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting because McDyess, all right, if this was,
I think he has
McDyess was in a 95 draft class. So if this were 15 years ago, Okongwu was definitely a 4.
Yeah.
And he is like a McDyess comparison. But then like in today's NBA, he's gonna be a 5. More than likely. I don't know, some people still see him as a 4. I mean, he played with another big in college. I think he's a pure 5. But McDyess would be a 5 in today's NBA. Yeah, I mean, young McDyess, when he was in Denver, man, talk about high flyer, above the rim. And then towards the end of his career, he was more so of a catch and shoot guy, or, kind of like a pick and pop guy. He had a pretty good jump shot within the, inside the 3-point line. Injuries kind of robbed him of his his ceiling in a sense. But McDyess was, he made a lot of money. was a really good player. So that's a very interesting combination.
I think Okongwu, he can develop into a pretty good shooter though.
Yeah.
More so, I think he can be a little bit, maybe a slightly better shooter than Bam in a couple years, which, I mean, I think Bam still has a lot of room to grow on offense, but I think he's more of like a scorer than Bam will be and less of a passer. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Bam is we didn't know at Kentucky that he had all this in his toolbox. So, well, only time will tell, because I feel like Okongwu probably showed more overall skills at USC than Bam showed at Kentucky. And so, I mean, if I don't know if Bam always had him or if Miami just gave him some player badges. They did something. I don't know, but they turned him into They did something special. And,
Yeah.
in a redraft, he definitely goes a whole lot higher than where he was selected. All right, here we go. This is the highest I've seen. So you got Tyrese Maxey at number 6. I think my guy Alex had Tyrese at number 7. Those was the highest. Tyrese, he's now like joined Obi Toppin as far as guys with like the widest range. So I've seen Tyrese in the high 20s. I've seen him in the low 20s. And now I've in the last week, I've seen 2 guys have within the top 7. So who is your comparison for Tyrese Maxey?
So I changed my list up a little bit, but I'm pretty sure I had like Lou Williams, and I think his ultimate ceiling would be like Bradley Beal. I don't think he gets there. I think he's more like a Lou type, or just like I don't even know another good like scoring point guard. Just like,
well, here's one. What do you think about?
I guess like a poor man's Jamal Murray maybe.
I can see that.
What do you say?
Kentucky. What do you think about Drew Holiday?
I could see that because he's an underrated defender. He can get after on defense.
Yeah.
I don't think I mean,
like Holiday is a point, but he can play the 2.
Yeah.
He can pretty much play in any backcourt next to anybody. And so, I always thought maybe like Lou Will, and a friend of mine, he mentioned that if he were his agent, then he would have him watch a lot of Drew Holiday film and try to, tell him to develop his game like Drew Holiday. So that would be, a pretty good comparison.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, especially if he doesn't Drew can handle the ball, obviously, but if he doesn't become like a lead ball handler, I think that's a more realistic comp for him.
All right. So let's see. All right. So what about the Colin Sexton comparison? What is your thoughts on Sexton? I like Sexton a lot. I think that coming into the league, his shooting was somewhat of a question, and he's developed into a really good shooter quietly.
Yeah.
And a very efficient scorer. Like if you would have told me Colin Sexton was going to be an efficient scorer in year 2, I would have been like, nah, I could see him putting up the points per game. I just didn't think that he would be efficient. And so shout out to Colin Sexton for putting in the work on his jumper.
Yeah.
Because
he's shooting like 40. I think he's like 43% from 3 this year or something.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. I think I still think KPJ is probably the best player on that team. I'm the highest on him probably, but I'd say he can be like on a good team, like a 20-point per game scorer, probably around there. Colin Sexton.
All right, this is a little bit off subject. Biggest difference between Kevin Porter Jr. and Anthony Edwards. Talent for talent, skill for skill.
I don't really see a major difference.
Exactly.
I mean, I was a huge Kevin Porter Jr. guy last year. I had him top 5, but yeah, I don't really see a major difference between the two.
I don't either. I don't either. And that's why I've mentioned before, the intel on Kevin Porter Jr. must have been really, really bad. There had to have been something major other than, he came off the bench at USC. On paper, his numbers weren't as good. He didn't have like the total freedom that Edwards had. But talent for talent, skill for skill, I just don't see why one guy is projected to go number 1 and why one guy was the last pick or second, very late in the first round in another draft. So to me, it just makes me wonder, was it basketball related or just something that we didn't know about? Because Kevin Porter Jr. has the goods, man. He's
really good. I'm excited to see what he becomes in the next couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. All right, number 7, you got Patrick Williams. And now here's the tough one. He's tough to find a comparison for. So
I'd say like maybe Jonathan Isaac, but I don't feel great about that because Isaac's just such a good defender. He's like one of the best combo forward wings in the league. I don't know if Williams gets there, but he's a good defender, good build, long wingspan, and I think has the potential to be a good catch and shoot guy. I don't think he's ever going to be like a primary option on offense. I don't really see that unless he goes to like somewhere like San Antonio where they can really unlock his potential. But even then, I don't know if he can really do that. But I think like maybe Robert Covington type guy, something like that.
Yeah.
Good defender.
Yeah, I
Good.
mean, I used to work in the G League, and Robert Covington has come a long way from when he was with RGV. I mean, he's
Mhm.
really, developed his skill set, and he's, come into like a defined role as a switchy defender that can knock down open shots. But the funny thing about Robert Covington is, dude is like a rim protector, man. He was blocking
Yeah.
shots like crazy in Houston. Like,
He's basically a 5 now.
yeah. Well, now with all the changes in Houston the last couple of days, I have no
Who
clue what they're
knows?
going to do because that
Yeah.
team is built for that, Morey, D'Antoni style play. All right, let's go to number 8. You got Deni Avdija. And who is your comparison for Deni? This is also somewhat tough.
So I had I think his ceiling's like Hedo, Türkoglu. I think his realistic's like probably Andre Kirilenko. Just like a really, really good defender, good team player, good passer. Not really a like primary option on offense, but a complimentary guy that can handle the ball a little bit.
Yeah, I think this was tough for me because, like, as far as Hedo, he's not as big,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
Türkoglu, at worst, he was a shooter. Like he was a knockdown shooter, but he
Yeah.
could run the offense. He was ahead of his time. I mean, I know he would love to play in today's NBA. I had opportunity when I lived in Istanbul to have dinner with him a couple of times, and I'm like, I kept thinking like, dang, if he played in another era, he would be. I mean, he'd be a high level all star in my opinion. 6'10",
Yeah.
could shoot, could push the rock, and then it just kind of shows that 2010 Orlando Magic team was also ahead of its time because they
Oh
played,
yeah. They're really good.
1 in, 4 out. They had floor spacers, and to me, he was their best playmaker on the
Mm-hmm.
team. So Denny's not as big and he's not as good of a shooter. Only time will tell if he ever develops into that type of a shooter. And then Kirilenko would be interesting because I think Jonathan Isaac is the black Kirilenko. I
Yeah.
think that their comparisons are similar as far as like 3-4 shot blocking wing that can defend multiple positions. So if Isaac ever can remain healthy, I think Kirilenko is his ceiling. But yeah, it was hard for me to find a comparison for Deni. Um, I mean, I've heard people say Luka in a sense, not without the Luka without the 30-point per game scoring, but just
Yeah.
as far as like, a big wing / guard that can run the offense. I definitely think that Deni should get more opportunities to play as a playmaker. I feel like
Yeah.
Maccabi most of the season kind of had him in the corner, and they didn't really, utilize his full skill package until their playoffs. But yeah, it's tough for me to find a comparison to Deni. I think like his lowest ceiling is like Cedi Osman in a sense, um, but you don't draft him as a lottery pick to be Osman, so you
Yeah. I
got to
could
hope
see
for a
like
lot
his
better.
his floor being like Evan Turner, maybe something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if the jump shot never improves, then yeah, Evan Turner could be a good comparison. All right,
Yeah, I think
so
his ceiling definitely depends on his jumper and how his offensive game develops. Because if it doesn't, I think he's just like a really good role player or like a solid starter for someone. Which I wouldn't draft that top 5, but
yeah, I mean, I like him. I could see him going top 5 because I think like on most championship level teams, they had a guy that was a 4 that could push the ball and make plays.
yeah, that's true.
So I mean, you go back to the Bulls. You had like Kukoc came off the bench, and he could get the rebound at 6'11". He could push the rock, make plays. You saw how good the Lakers were with Odom in that
Yeah.
role. And then even like with Golden State, I mean, you still had your Clay and your Steph doing the scoring and Durant, but they had Draymond who could be a matchup nightmare in a sense because he could run the offense at the 4 spot, even the 5,
Yeah.
run pick and rolls. And
Guard
so,
everyone.
yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to match up with a team that has a 4-man that's running the offense and you're running like 4-1 pick and pops or
Yeah.
4-5 pick and roll. So I think Deni, in my opinion, is going to be like a best case scenario, like a complimentary all-star, like a Lamar Odom, Draymond Green, Tony Kukoc type guy that if he's your third best player, he's a perfect piece to surround with, your 2 all-stars.
Yeah, I like that comp. I like that Kukoc comp. I could see that.
Yeah. All right, so here's the big one, in my opinion, the toughest one. The word unicorn has been thrown around a little loosely the last few years, but Alexei Pokusevski has unicorn skill set. Who will you compare him to?
So this is a hard one.
Very.
I compare him to like Lamar Odom. I think his passing is just so special, and I don't know, he just doesn't really have a ton of weaknesses in my opinion, other than his frame just being so small, and then his level of competition wasn't very good. But I think Odom, like a good point forward who can pass the ball, shoot the ball a little bit, get other guys involved, and play some pretty good defense, I think could be a similar player to Odom in a sense. Maybe a
Yeah,
slightly better shooter.
for me, I can see some flashes of Odom. For me, it's probably a lazy comparison because I'm comparing him to his fellow countrymen, but I see him as a super skinny Jokic.
Yeah, I could see that too.
I mean, he's not going to be able to like transition from point guard, floor spacer to bully ball like Jokic can. But I mean, like skill wise, very similar. And I've mentioned before, I've had the opportunity to watch him live, and I saw like the best and the worst of him. But yeah, I mean, he's a natural wing or a natural guard in a sense, as far as like the way he moves and how fluid he is, how he sees the court, his passing. I think that he has the potential to be a much better defender than Jokic because if he ever got that motor going, he'd be a shot blocker. He has the,
Oh yeah.
the coordination to be able to defend multiple positions. At his best, he can get multiple steals. And yeah, I think that the only word I can think of for him is like a weapon, like a guy that you can put in multiple roles if he reaches his maximum potential. I think at the worst case scenario, you could end up using him as a floor spacer that can make passes for others, kind of like a Joe Ingles, like a 7-foot Joe Ingles, worst case scenario. And then how dangerous would your offense be if he ends up turning out to be Ingles, but you got a 7-footer that's knocking down shots that can be a secondary playmaker. But then best case scenario, depending on his mentality, is you got a 7-foot center that you can run the offense through. He can get the rebound and he can bring the ball up court. And I think like Jokic made Jamal Murray's life so much easier.
Oh yeah.
Murray just really had a chance to focus on scoring. And then he's become a much better passer like this year. But before it seemed like he was all about, buckets. And so he didn't have to be put in the box as a point guard. He had to, he could just kind of focus on what he was good at and improve over time. So yeah, I mean, to me that would be my comparison. It may be lazy because I'm comparing him to another, 7-foot skilled Serbian. But yeah, I think he's just Jokic light, skinny version.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm very interested to see where he lands because I think that's very, very important for him.
Yeah.
Because I think like somewhere like San Antonio or Portland, somewhere that has like already has talent in place and has like a good staff that can develop him and get him to where he can be. I think somewhere like that, I would be excited for him.
Yeah,
So like
even
Sacramento, nah.
Sacramento, I don't think would be a good fit. Well, it's kind of tough because they have a new front office, and so we can't really. It's not fair to judge them, the new guys, over the past 20 years. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like Boston would be a good situation for him because
Like
there's no need for him to come in and contribute right away. Yeah, Portland. I'm a Blazers fan, so I wouldn't mind seeing him in Portland. Yeah, like I say, it's kind of hard because you don't want to compare a current situation to past. Like in most cases, I would say I wouldn't want him in Phoenix.
Yeah, no.
But I figure like Monty Williams has definitely like brought a different life to that organization.
Yeah.
And then like with James Jones is now like I think he's their GM. So it's unfair to compare them to like the same group that had like Josh Jackson and drafted Bender high and all of that. So
yeah.
All right, so let's move on to number 10. You got James Wiseman. So you have Wiseman lower than most. This is probably the lowest I've seen him. And what is your comparison for Wiseman?
So I have like a combination of Ibaka and Miles Turner, which I mean is still a really good center. I don't know. I'm still skeptical on Wiseman, which I don't have the access to like EYBL stuff and Team USA stuff and stuff like that and like practices and everything. So I haven't got to see everything, obviously. I just saw like Memphis and some high school games, but I'm still kind of pessimistic on him. I don't know if he's ever going to be more than like a solid pick and pop guy from mid range and just a really good finisher and a really good shot blocker and rim runner. I don't know if he's going to be much more than that, but I mean, I think he could be, depending on where he lands, and could just be completely wrong on his ceiling because I haven't really got to see that much of him just because of limited sample size of Memphis.
Right. So based off of your comparisons, you're buying into him becoming a pretty good floor spacer. Okay. And I know you said like a limited sample size, because I want to say at Memphis, he probably made like maybe one or two jump shots. It was mostly just activity, rim running, vertical lob threat. So what did you see that makes you feel like he can develop into an outside shooter?
I feel like in high school, he was a pretty above average shooter, and I think that could translate into the NBA level. I just don't think with the amount of games he really had the opportunity to be able to shoot as much as he would have been able to if he would have played a whole year and maybe shown that potential a little bit more. But if you're going off like this year, I could see like Whiteside being a comparison, or like Tristan Thompson maybe, even though I think he can be a lot better than that. Or not a lot better, but a little bit better than Tristan Thompson, something like that.
Okay. All right, now we're going to number 11. This is the highest I've seen Tyrell Terry. So what are your comparisons to Tyrell Terry? Now, actually, before you get into yours, I appreciate the fact that your comparisons weren't the typical ones I've seen. I keep seeing Steph Curry, Trae Young. And so that wasn't on your list. Who was your comparison for Tyrell Terry?
I forgot who I put. Who did I?
I have on here Jason Terry.
Oh, yeah, I did have Jason Terry. Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm even higher on him now than I was after. I mean, I think he grew like another inch maybe and put on a little bit of weight. And he looks a little bit more explosive. So I think his ceiling can maybe even be higher than that. And he may be in my top 5 before the draft ends.
Oh, wow. But I think you got like you got 30 days to the draft, around, give or take a few days. That's high. I haven't seen him as high as 11. So you must be really, really high on him if you think that you're going to move him up in the next month.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you like, as far as like his ceiling, what do you think his ceiling is?
This is going to be old school, and maybe like Mike Bibby on the Kings. something like that.
That makes me feel old. That Mike Bibby is old school. Because I want to say, I think that Mike was class of 96. So he's like a year older than me. I was a senior in high school when Arizona won the national championship. And I'll never forget that because when I did my pool, I predicted Arizona to win. And I was like one of the few people that predicted that. And I was more so because Michael Dickerson was like one of my favorite players. And then I just thought Arizona was dope because their shoes were different. Like Bibby was wearing like the foam posits and all of that. So, but yeah, I mean, that's not a bad comparison. I think that he may have a little bit more wiggle to his game and may go to the rack a little bit more than Bibby. But Bibby kind of changed Sacramento around. I mean, Weber was their guy, but they became a more stable team once they swapped out Jason Williams for Bibby. He brought the balance and the outside shooting and I mean, they were a play away from going to the NBA Finals. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad comparison. I actually kind of like the Jason Terry one a little bit more, considering that Jason Terry was on that Arizona team with Mike Bibby. Because I think with like Terry early in his career, he started off as a point guard, and then he settled into a role as a sixth man, but he was also the guy that closed games.
Yeah.
And so to me, closing is more important than finishing. And so, yeah, I kind of like that comparison where Jason Terry could be your one, but he could also be your, an undersized two. And he's another guy that I'm sure he wishes that he played in today's NBA because he shot threes. He shot a lot of threes back when the league wasn't so three-point heavy. And so I'm sure he wishes like, man, if I played in today's NBA, I'd be close to a max player.
I think another ceiling I'd have for him is probably who was I just thinking? CJ McCollum, maybe. Like his ultimate ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, CJ got the ball handling and offensive one-on-one creativity. That's not too many guys like CJ. I mean, and it's funny because you know what he's doing in a sense. You know he's not necessarily going to the rack. You know he's just going to, rhythm, dribble, snatch, step back, pull up. I'm a Blazers fan, so I'm biased, but I love watching CJ play. And I hope the Blazers never split Dame and CJ up. I know a lot of people are calling for that, but
I don't want that to happen either as a Hornets fan.
All right, so now we're at number 12. You got Tyrese Haliburton. And who are your comparisons for Tyrese?
So I think my favorite comp, I'll move him down actually a little bit. I think my favorite comp for him is probably Lonzo.
That's mine.
Yeah, I don't I can't really find another one. I saw I was gonna say Michael Carter Williams, but that's underselling him a little bit. I think he can be better than that. But
if he's Michael Carter Williams with a jumper and a little bit better passer, I don't think that's far fetched. Because Michael Carter Williams, if he had a jumper, which he's improved a little bit. I mean, early in his career it was nothing at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad comparison at all. Both big point guards, not necessarily engines, but guys that could defend multiple positions. And, I mean, obviously, like I said, Haliburton is a much better shooter. But I think he can be a better version of Lonzo. And my brother believes that eventually Lonzo's going to have to move to the three because he doesn't put the ball on the floor. And in today's NBA, how many point guards don't run pick and rolls or aren't a threat to really get downhill? And if he just becomes a floor spacer, then he could end up being like a floor spacing, ball moving wing as opposed to a point guard, which, it's possible.
Yeah. And I think my favorite fit for Haliburton would probably be Atlanta. but I would probably trade down to take him. I really like that fit behind Trae. They're like polar opposite players.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a really good fit for him. I don't know if I really like any of the other fits for him in the top 10 because I just don't really think he's a top 10 player in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, my fit in the top 10 of the teams in the top 10 is if Golden State trades down and they get, another player that they can add to their rotation, and then they end up getting him. And I think he could fit in with that offense because there would be really no pressure on him to do anything but come off the bench, knock down open shots, and serve as a fourth playmaker or, second playmaker in the second unit or whatever. So I think that would be the best fit for him because, like I said, there would be absolutely no pressure. He would just slide into being a role player. I think any other team.
The timeline too.
Yeah.
Because he can play right away. He wouldn't take too long to get too many minutes. So.
Yeah. Because I think with any other team he goes to and they plug him in as a starting point guard on day one, then you're expecting him to somewhat be the engine. While Golden State or even Atlanta, there's no pressure on him there.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're down to 13. You got Saddiq Bey. I'm a Blazers fan, and I want Saddiq Bey in Portland at 16. Based off of your list, he wouldn't be available. And to me, this is somewhat of a tough comparison also because I don't really know if there's a player in the NBA that is like a hybrid 3-4 that is a 40% shooter from three that can also be a point forward if you need.
Yeah.
So who did you compare him to?
I compared him to Tobias Harris, but I don't feel great about that one because he's just such a good defender. He can put the ball on the floor, like you said, make passes for his teammates, and he's a really, really good shooter. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't really find a good one for him. I think he's just like the perfect role player. Yeah. And I've been really high on him. Even since last year at Villanova, he looked really good.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think he's like I've been saying, I want him in Portland. I think he's an ideal complementary piece to what the Blazers have. But I think he can go anywhere. You can put him in any situation, and he will just kind of enhance the players around him because he does so many things well. But, yeah, Tobias Harris, I like Tobias. I've always wondered, why he keeps moving around so much because I think he went from, Milwaukee, Orlando, Detroit, Clippers, Sixers, and then he got a ridiculous contract. Shout out to him because I read he negotiated his own contract, so he saved himself a lot of money on his agent fees. And now I think he's stuck in Philly. It's gonna be hard for him to be moved with that contract. But he's a really good player. But it's hard because you don't necessarily always see guys that are good players, and I've never heard anything about him character-wise. But I just wonder why he keeps moving around. I know when he entered the league, he was super young. He finished after his freshman year, but I want to say he may have been 18. Mm-hmm. So even now, if you look at, I don't know how many years he's played in the league, but he's a lot younger age-wise than you would expect for a guy that seems like he's been in the league for 10 years. All right, so now the last one for today is Isaac Okoro. Who do you compare Okoro to? What is your best case scenario for him?
My best case scenario is Jimmy, and after seeing him in the playoffs, I think that's even pushing it a little bit just because how good Jimmy's been. But I think a more realistic one would be Gerald Wallace, just a really, really good wing defender. Really good team defender, can slash to the rim. Not really a great shooter, offensive player, but just a really good defender and athlete, slasher, that type of guy.
The Jimmy comparisons, on one hand, somebody could say that's crazy, but I think the only thing that's stopping him from being the next Jimmy Butler is having Jimmy's work ethic because he's obviously talented. It takes talent to get to the NBA, no doubt about that. But Jimmy's like self-made in a sense, just all off of just hard work and work ethic. I read one summer he stayed in a mansion and he had like no TVs. He worked out 3 times a day. And it's all like drive and determination and work ethic. And Okoro is obviously a better prospect at the same age, more skill at the same age. And so if he had Jimmy's work ethic, then I think the sky is the limit for him. Like, to be honest, if I'm Okoro and I look at a Jimmy Butler type, I'm reaching out to him and saying, hey, can I work out with you? What is your routine? Who is your trainer? I want to do everything that you did. And I think that if he did that, the sky would be the limit, because Butler came into the league known as just a defender.
Yeah.
And then we've all heard the stories how, he went to junior college, to Marquette and all of that. So his is just all like putting in the work. And if Okoro can put in the work like that, then I definitely think that he could be a very high-level all-star, Olympian type franchise player. And so,
I can see that. I can see that as a ceiling. If his jumper doesn't get there, I think that's the main thing. If his jumper gets there, I think he's going to be an all-star caliber player just because his two-way impact. But if he doesn't, I think he's just going to be like a really, really good wing defender, which is, very, very important nowadays. But
yeah, but he'd have to add shooting, because if he doesn't, then he becomes Andre Roberson, who
that's true.
Who, just 5 years ago, Andre Roberson could be a starter on the NBA team, actually a starter on a contender. But I think in today's NBA, as it is played right now, Andre Roberson is not going to be able to get any minutes on a contender, because in the playoffs, teams are going to send doubles off of his man, and it's just going to make life hell for, the best offensive player on his team. So the key is jump shot. And to me, I believe that the easiest thing to work on, the easiest thing to add, unless you don't have any touch. But I think that he does have enough touch to where he can be a good player, a good shooter. Because, in my opinion, nobody's played since March. It is mid-October right now. Every player has had a lot of time, almost 2 off seasons in a sense, to work on their weaknesses. And, hopefully he's been making 200 to 300 corner threes every day for the past few months. If he's done that, then he should be fine.
Yeah.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to ask you to come back to finish out your first round. We stopped at 14. And I know you mentioned that you have like your own. Is it your own website?
I do like NFL draft writing for it's called SteelCityUnderground.com. I just do like mock drafts, scouting reports, stuff like that. And I just figured
you do it for football and basketball?
Yeah, I just started doing basketball like this year, just kind of interested in doing it because I just graduated in high school last year, so I'm just kind of seeing what I want to do.
Well, man, props to you, man. I knew you look young, but the fact that you got the old school. You mentioned a few players that are from a previous era. So kind of reminds me of me when I was like in high school. I knew I was a big sports junkie. You know what I'm saying? Like I knew the stats of the guys that were, the generation before me. I used to follow football heavily, and now I'm just pretty much strictly basketball. So yeah, props to you, man. Just keep on writing and doing, what you love. You can end up making it a profession because obviously the passion is there behind it. So, but yeah, thanks again for coming on. Like I said, I'd love to have you on again to finish out your big board. This one is a little unique because you gave all player comparisons, which some people are kind of scared to go for comparisons. And then like I had mentioned it to someone else on a previous podcast, and he said he just kind of really stays away from them. So, yeah, man, like I said, I enjoyed this one because it was a little different. So
yeah, thank you for having me on again.
Yeah, no problem, man. Anytime. So I'll reach out to you offline, and then we can set up part 2. All right. Once again, it's Raphael,
Thank you.
NBA Draft Junkies. I got my guy Chase. He just gave his lottery big board with comparisons. So check it out. Stay tuned for part 2. Again, it's Raphael, NBA Draft Junkies, and I'm out.